Thanks for joining us for another edition of The Small Business Show with Jim Fitzpatrick, exclusively on ASBN.com.
Hey everyone, Jim Fitzpatrick. Thanks so much for joining me this morning. You're watching another edition of The Small Business Show, exclusively right here at ASBN.com. AI seems to be everywhere and everyone's talking about it, as you know. Today we are diving into marketing in the age of AI. Joining us today is Shama Hyder, who is the founder and CEO of Zen Media. She's also a keynote speaker, strategic advisor, and best-selling author. Shama has helped countless businesses rethink how they connect with their customers. So thank you, Shama, so much for joining us on the show once again.
Thanks for having me, Jim. This is an exciting and super relevant topic right now.
Yeah, there's no question about it. Everybody is going AI crazy, and it's going to be running the world, if it isn't already, to some degree. So how should small businesses and entrepreneurs start thinking about AI in their marketing?
Gosh, there's so many ways to really start thinking about AI in terms of your marketing. But one of the first things that I always tell businesses to think about is how this is going to change how customers find you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the essence of marketing, is how do people find you and how do they remember you and do they recall you when they need you? That's
right.
Marketing high level umbrella.
Yeah.
And then all the other stuff that falls under that umbrella. And so if you think about it, we are going to this shift right now of a zero-click world, meaning, for the longest time, businesses have been accustomed to getting traffic from Google and Bing and Yahoo. People search into keywords, and so you say, I'm looking for a local dry cleaner near me. I'm looking for a local bakery, vet shop. Doesn't matter. And then, of course, the local, gives you a bunch of links, and people you get traffic. So you were able to track this and see this and compete for this sort of traffic. And of course, you could always pay for it too, right? Paid ads also falls under the umbrella of marketing. But then you think about how we as customers, all of us as consumers, not just with our marketer hat on, are changing. And that's a big shift, because what happens, and now you see this more and more, when people just go to ChatGPT, when they just go to Copilot, when they go to Perplexity, whatever, insert your favorite AI tool here, and they just ask it, what's the best dry cleaner in my area?
Yeah.
Where should I take my dog if, she's sick? What should I? And so when you start looking at these things, then you have to think about, well, gosh, now how do I get people to find me in a post-search, zero-click world where it's going to be often one answer? And so that requires a very different rejiggering, if you will, of how you approach marketing and how you think about it and where you want your name to come up.
Yeah, for sure. What's the biggest misconception you think people or businesses have when it comes to AI?
That it won't affect them. And then it's, I got plenty of people I know are like, I hope I retire before this. And look, I don't even blame them, because the change happens so fast, right? And it's insane, because you have to think about history and think about how we've even gotten here. Throughout, everything has been an evolution. This is really an invention. I mean, if you think about like digital, paper, it's just we went from print to being digital, but it's kind of the same concept. You're still reading and watching videos. You went from TV to smaller screens. Yeah. It's all been an evolution. AI is really a game changer, that it is an invention. It is beyond an evolution. And so it's going to, we've enjoyed sort of no middlemen, being able to market. Small businesses had a really good shot against the big guys. The internet was a level playing field in social media. And now, of course, that's changing again.
That's right. It's exactly right. It is absolutely crazy out there. So are you saying that AI and chat and these other AI platforms will replace Google? Or because you're saying people are using it now as a platform to search anything and everything and trusting it even more than Google?
Yes. So I think, when you think about Google, you think about like Alphabet, Google's parent company, the bigger sort of picture. Even Google will now give you just one answer. So if you're talking about, are we going to move from traditional search? Absolutely. We're already moving, because who wants to do that? Who wants to sit there and scroll through 18 recommendations when AI knows about me and knows what I like? And like the dry cleaner example, if it knows I like wearing silk and all my stuff is, very sensitive material, it's already going to give me just a dry cleaner in my neighborhood that specializes in that. And so that changes the playing field and how you market.
That's right. Now it's the onus is now though on the dry cleaner to make sure that they are optimized on not just Google but also on chat, right? Or any other AI platform. So if that dry cleaners is not telling their story effectively and maintaining that on an ongoing basis, then even AI won't be able to help them, right?
Correct. And you'd have to think about where AI pulls its content from, right? So it pulls from community platforms like Reddit. So when your customers go there and say good things, when they complain, it doesn't matter. It's pulling all that information. Your reviews still matter. So customer experience actually becomes really crucial because you're counting on that word of mouth more than ever. Earned media makes a huge impact. In fact, just today, ChatGPT has now rolled out e-commerce within. So think about when people can read an article and buy something immediately without ever leaving that interface. And that's a huge game changer.
Right. There's no question. How can businesses strike the right balance between automation and authenticity? Because we heard so much in the last 20 years, specifically the last 5 years, about the importance of being authentic online, whether it be on your website now or really in social media.
Yeah, and look, I don't mean to be a downer, Jim, by saying that it's only going to get harder. Right? So
That's
I
okay.
want to be very clear because I don't like telling people just what they want to hear. Or,
Listen, we're business people are very resilient. They need to know the truth. They need to know what they need to do in order to not just survive but thrive, right?
Yes, absolutely. So, I am an optimist. I think technology does more good for us than bad, but there is a learning curve and there is a kind of a period where we're all sort of figuring it out together and what's acceptable and what's not. And,
right.
what can AI platforms even take from content and publishers and what they can't. And, so there's a lot of questions we haven't been able to answer. But to your point of, I think authenticity becomes more important than ever because in a world of tech, where tech can do so many things, that human relationship, that empathy, those personalized experiences, when you go into your local coffee shop and the barista knows your name and they know your order, like that's still going to be incredibly valuable. In fact, that's going to become more valuable.
Yeah.
And so you do have to think about how do you create those experiences and be more mindful and intentional about creating those experiences.
Yeah, for sure. Where do you see AI taking marketing in the next 3 to 5 years? I know that's a very broad question there, but that's probably a show unto itself. But
gosh, can I say to hell in a handbasket? Is that an example?
No, what worked before AI might not work, moving forward, right? I think we've got to have the ability to adapt and to rethink marketing in this new AI environment that we're in. And if we don't, we're going to get left behind, right?
Absolutely. The biggest challenge that becomes, Jim, and this is why I say this sort of, tongue in cheek, is that, mediocrity is now the floor. It used to be hard to put a flyer together, right? But you can put a flyer together now within seconds. Yep. Anyone can.
That's
you don't
right.
need design ability. You don't need to be able to write copy. You don't need to be able to spell. You don't need any of these things that are sort of prerequisites for putting together a decent, and so in some ways it's really freeing because if you just have ideas and you always felt bottlenecked by your lack of technology skills because you're like, I have this idea and I'd love to do it. Well, now that's not an excuse anymore, right? Because you have the ability to do that. I think the question that people need to be asking, and I don't see this being asked as much, is really thinking about how do we stand out? Because it just got a lot more noisier. And yes, AI is going to clean it up and curate these experiences and so forth. But the noise, the sheer amount of content we will have out there, both quality and just slops. Remember, we went through a period of spam when email first came out and just getting a handle on it, not 100%, but we figured out it's spam, the folders,
right.
The systems. Now we're going to enter an age of what I think is slop, where anyone can create anything, so they do. So you have to think very creatively and think about how do I make my business stand out? It takes me back to a few years ago when we had a client who was an eye doctor. And he was thinking about how do I get customers to leave more reviews and my patients to talk about their experience. And it's really funny because I had spotted the fact that a few of his patients had talked about his salsa. Like he made this amazing salsa. Like nothing to do with being an eye doctor, right? he made great salsa. And so he said, how about you make some of this and you start giving away some jars of salsa? It was like, and it was amazing. I mean, the people loved every review. He was like, became known as the salsa doc.
Yeah.
And so I think finding those things, your passions, connecting those things, finding a way to stand out in an ocean that's going to get increasingly red.
That's
and I
right.
think AI just, adds to that. So you've got to figure that part out for your business.
So how does AI impact your media business? I mean, with all that can be done from business owners themselves, where does a Zen Media fit in? How are you helping your clients?
That is such an excellent question. Look, internally, we've been able to increase our output a lot more, right? One person can now produce 10x the work they were doing before.
Yeah.
And if you say that doesn't have repercussions, come on, of course it does.
Yeah.
And so, but I think where our value comes in, where agencies, anyone can really provide this value, is thinking about discernment and what kind of questions our clients should be asking, and how do you come up with those creative ideas to stand out. And then of course, you use AI. Like, I think it's a hybrid thing. I don't think this is going away. You always need, I think about like when platforms came out like Redfin and so forth, where people said, you know what, you won't need an agent anymore because anyone can put up their house up for sale and buy it.
Yeah.
Yet over 90% of people still want to work with an agent.
That's right.
Because it's
That's
that
right.
human.
That's
it's
right.
that connection.
Yeah.
It's the, you know me, you know my family, you
Right.
understand me. And at the end of the day, it's someone who's liable. So I think until you can take AI to court, humans will still have the upper hand.
And there'll probably be a day that we're able to do that, right? Because it's
One day, but it's not close yet. So until
I
then,
know. We'll have a good run at it, right? That's fantastic. So Shama Hyder, founder and CEO of Zen Media. We'll show all the information on the screen here if you want to get a hold of Shama. She's a strategic advisor, best-selling author, phenomenal keynote speaker. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. It's always great catching up with you, and I know that our audience loves the content that you share with them. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Jim. Fun times.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of The Small Business Show with Jim Fitzpatrick, exclusively on ASBN.com.